How are you getting on today, folks? How are you all doing? Welcome back to another video from Courtney Brothers. The light's kind of glary there. But anyways, this is reassembling of the final drive in the digger, and it is Aidan's takeover now.
How are you getting on? It's Monday morning here. Lovely, rainy Monday morning. We're not too bad. We're in the shed. Got the lights on. And we're back at this job here. Stage rank. Starting to build up now again. So we've got our new bearing on here. And one side of our mechanical seal. That's what it looks like there. So you've got a big rubber O-ring and I suppose I'd call that a race on behind it. Here's one in the box actually, this is the other half of the seal. So there it is, rubber and steel ring. Ready to go on this other half here. It's just a small update for now. So it's actually, that'll go on the other side of this housing here, but we've got our other races on here for the bearings, 2 races in there now. Next step is to get the other half of the mechanical seal on this housing here, and most important part of the job is coming up then. Not sure if I'll record it or not, because yeah, I'll need all my hands for that one anyways, for sure. But yeah, we'll offer that housing up there and make sure the bearings get in place properly, and the famous mechanical seal as well. Just make sure that seats properly. That's the most important part of this job for sure. But yeah, just a little update for you. So I'm going to see if I can show you a shot of putting this mechanical seal here into the housing. Not sure how well you're going to be able to see it now, but I'll give it a go anyways. So what I'm doing is just getting a smear of, it's actually 80-90 gear oil on my glove, and just giving her a light coating on that rubber all the way around. And I'm going to leave the rubber on the steel collar while I'm doing that, because it seems to be the best way to get it done. If you put the rubber in first and then the collar, it doesn't, the collar doesn't really want to go on for you. So I'm just starting it almost like fitting a tire. Get one side in first, and then with a punch. Some people use a screwdriver. I'd rather use a punch because it has a blunt end on the end of it. And just gonna start one side first and then work it around, poking the rubber down. Nice and gradual. The oil just helps the rubber slip into the housing, because if you didn't have it lubricated some way, you'd be in fear of ripping or putting a slight tear on that big O-ring, which would not be good. So yeah, you could use grease, but oil slightly thinner lets the rubber pop into place, whereas grease, I think the rubber would be coming back out again, almost be too lubricated. Nice and gradual all the way around. So yeah, that's the basis of it anyways. I'll keep going around here, just make sure it's all the way home and go from there. So you would have seen from the time lapse I took there, we got our housing on here, and we have our two halves of the seal mated up there now, and our outside tapered bearing is in place there as well. So at this stage now, we can already feel it's not necessarily a preload from our bearings, but we have the seals mated, so they create a bit of preload. You can turn it by hand. Nothing major on that preload, but it still takes a bit of effort to spin it. So to get this bearing pushed in the rest of the way now, we have another ring gear here, and we have our nut then. These two pieces are locked together then, this little locking pin here. So we have a little dimple here. We have another one on our ring gear. So that's the dimple right there. So I'm going to line those up, because that's very important for just our final position for the nut. Not too handy to do it just with the one hand. Spline out. Have to go again. So now both lined up there, that dimple and that dimple, just at about 12 o'clock. We're gonna follow that up with a nut. You see these three holes down here just before I put the nut on. This one right here is where our locking pin is going to locate. And that determines our preload on the bearings. Two tapered bearings there, you would have seen them when I had them out in my hand. So those two are squeezed together, and that is just how tight this is determines the preload across those two bearings. So we'll get this nut on and we'll catch up with you then. So we have our nut on there, but as you can see it's not quite flush, and before we started the job it was pretty much flush, slightly inside this face here. So we have two bolts there across. Now it's tight. I've brought it in to where it's tight by hand. I can't spin it anymore by hand, so we'll just use this breaker bar here. Set up will be our bit of a spanner. Across our two bolts. And that's pulling the whole assembly then nice and square together. Getting tight already. I can still spin it by hand, it's not locking up or anything like that. Our seals look to be nice and square on. None of the rubber sticking out or anything like that. So yeah, very happy with how that's going together now. Delighted with that, because I just wasn't quite sure how that part was going to go, but we'll keep tightening her up here and see how we're fixed in. So now, here we are back again. Our two studs worked perfectly. Started off with this 1/2 inch breaker bar across them, and then finished her off with the 3/4 inch breaker bar, and our punch marks lined up perfectly, and so did our hole. You probably won't be able to see in there now. The hole for the locking pin lined up perfectly as well, so that's all locked in place. Preload set. Just spin it still by hand. Decent bit of effort to spin it, but our gap at the back looks just like when we started off. They do look pretty exposed, the mechanical seals in these track motors, but our final drives. But yeah, they're both the same either side now. I'm just going to check that one there for reference. Stuck my hand in and checked it. But yeah, that's the big part of this job done. Next now is fitting back housings. I'll put the sprocket back on again and start building it up again. Now, back again. So, next step is to put on this housing. The outside ring gear is part of that housing, and I suppose it's kind of like the bell housing of the gearbox, if you want to call it that. So I got my sealer on here, some thread locker on my bolts there, and yeah, ready to go here. I have the digger running now because hopefully you can hear me okay there as well, but the digger's running now because I needed to lift up the sprocket out of the chain. I have about half of these bolts in. I won't get myself under the sprocket now any part of me, but I'm just gonna, that ring of bolts there, you just see the heads of them there, they're going from this side out that way. So I can access half of them at a time. So I'm just going to spin it over. Spin it over so I can get the next half. Yeah, I should be good at that. Sprocket is lined up. Just going to let it back down now, but yeah, I'll get the rest of those bolts in and I'll show you the rest from there. You can see these bits are looking a bit better. We got them cleaned up. So once that housing's fully on, planetries then next. Now we've all our bolts tightened up at the back here. Show you my setup for getting them tightened. They're in a bit of a tricky spot. You can't really get a socket in there on a breaker bar, so old school technique, link the two spanners together and you get a good old tighten on them. The sprocket is locked on the chain, so can't go anywhere, but that's those tightened. It's all cleaned up, starting to look like a final drive again, and got these bits cleaned up as well on Saturday. So no more of that nasty brown looking oil on them. So just throw the planetaries in now and front cover on, oil in, and spin it up and just check that everything's okay, and that's the final drive. I'll stick you on time lapse here again. have our oil in here. Get it pumped in with that handy little pump there. So she's all sealed up. No pool of oil coming out of it yet. Which is a good sign. So I'm going to give it a test spin now. Just spin it over and leave the camera down here so you can see. Yeah, we're going to give it a whirl now. So if you hear any loud bangs, probably not a good sign, but yeah, not expecting that. So we'll see. So yeah, absolutely delighted with that now, must say. Very happy with that. Obviously we'll give it a while and just make sure there's no leaks out of it, but yeah, over the moon with that now. Looks to be a success. So I'm going to get my mess cleaned up here and pretty much done with the final drive, but we're not done with the job entirely. We you can see here these old bits of bolts have been cut and added onto the tip of the sprocket, and some of them have peeled off again. They've just broken the welds and peeled off. So my next job now is going to be cleaning those down and getting new bits of bolts back on there, getting them all welded up again, and just helps the sprocket stay in the chains a lot better, especially with the wide tracks. Just an extra bit of pressure on them. Patrick probably has that mentioned already, but yeah, delighted with that. So we'll move on now to the next job, fixing the sprocket. Welcome back. Getting towards the end of the day here, around 4 o'clock I think, and started on the welding job on the sprocket. Using our ESAB welder here. Great welder. One thing about it is coolant fan is very, very loud in it. Yeah, what's the model? Rebel EMP 285. It is an animal of a welder, to be fair. But yeah, so this is the job we're doing here. These ones have been done before, so it was a great job. Like I was saying earlier, it helps the sprocket just grip the chain a little bit better. So that's one I've done there now. These are old pad bolts, and we've just cut the head off, and that's tacked on there, and I've just run like a little root pass just to start it off. Preheated with MAP gas just ever so slightly. Seems to make a decent difference You can see as you're heating the steel, you can see the moisture literally making its way outwards from where you're heating. So it seems to be a great job. It's pretty well cranked up there. It's at 25 volts and 530 on the wire feed. So I'm going to run another pass over the top of that, and we'll show you a bit more then. Should look like that when I'm finished, something like that. But yeah, we'll keep going here anyways. So now we're getting through this job here anyways. That's what they're looking like with the weld on them. Kind of getting the settings a little bit better there now. That's pretty much going to do the job, I would say. But that's what we're using. It's an old pad bolts. I don't know what grade they are, you know, they're definitely not an 8.8 standard bolt, but I'd be thinking they're either a 10.9 or a 12.9. Any of them I've ever seen have the top worn off. It'll be generally wrote here on the top of the bolt, but I'd say they're a 12.9 strength bolt. So they should be made out of good stuff. It just looks like it has a whole lot more bite now already. Got a couple more to do. See, those ones broke off there. Yeah, but another 6 or 7 to do, I'd say, on this side, and then we'll have to split the track on the far side and do the same thing, because yeah, it was skipping the teeth like we were saying. But that is the general gist of this job anyways. Going pretty good so far.
Me again. Just back to finish off the video basically. I have no idea how much video Aidan has done or anything like that. He said he done video on, so the video is on him today. So it is, but this is all back together. He ran it and all that, so it's 100%. And he's welding on these. I don't know, has he videoed that or not? He more than likely has gone through it. They're old pad bolts, head cut off them. Weld them on. It has been done, but just they weren't burnt in enough. That's a common trick with the with diggers with the long pads on them, or the long tracks on the heavy pads, because the just stops them jumping, gives them an extra bite. That is it anyways. There you have it. So he's to weld that up, join the track again. John might give him a hand doing that, because it's not a two-man job. Yeah, well, it is. 2 men make life an awful lot easier now with that, because you can have one lad holding it, lining it up, the other lad pop the pin through. Where is the master pin? I don't know if Aidan has showed you that or not, but it's the new type master pin. Here it is. New type master pin with like a circlip in it, or not a pin, split pin in it. There isn't much wear on it. No, it's fine. Plenty good enough to go back in. That saves gas, sledging, and just hardship. Saves. The biggest thing about it is you're heating the links and that, getting them off. You're kind of spreading them, and messy work. They are godsend them, to be fair. But anyways, that'll be joined up tomorrow. I'm going to get him to split that track while he's at it, I'm pretty sure, and weld them on as well. Do that. And I'm going to seed in. I'm not going to do the springs. We're going to work it, because that needs to get out there. John needs to do a bit of clearing out there while he's home on holidays. That'll make a bit of a video or 2 or 3 as well. And I want it around, and I want it in January as well, with the white tracks on it. So I want to get that done. Hopefully that will stop the jumping. We might need to do something about springs. If we do, we do. I'm not too fussed, but we'll eliminate that end of it anyways. Not, we'll move out to the idlers, the springs and that, and see can we get it out some ways or other without taking springs out. Put in a tougher spring, or shorten the spring and put a plate in or something, just so it doesn't have as much free play. You might say, oh, tighten them up, keep them tight, but they are pretty tight as they are. There's not much slack in them, and I don't like them ringing tight. I like a bit of slack, because that eats the bearings out of the track motors, eats the shaft and bearings out of the idlers and hard-on rollers as well. And it's just stress and fatigue on the whole undercarriage, which is unnecessary. But anyways, that's me doing enough rambling on. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we shall catch you in the next one. Oh yeah, we had glorious sunshine today as well. Sun was out, which we haven't seen in I don't know when. But great to see it, and hopefully things keep dried up and we get the last work done for the year. Good luck.